7:30. Every time I think of Mayor Cory Booker, who wants to replace Frank Lautenberg in that special general election, why oh why on October 16th, a Wednesday, are they having a special election against Steve Lonigan? I think Michael Jackson, I think the years that he and Shmuley Botek, the rabbi from Bergen County, would go to these events with Michael Jackson, that pedophile on a pedestal, and I say, Steve Adubato Jr., why am I the only one who seems to remember that dog and pony show on behalf of Michael Jackson? You remember that? Do you remember that, Steve Adubato Jr.?
I do, but I'm not loving that you're playing Michael Jackson before my segment, but that's another story.
Okay, but, hey, people have said, look, that was Cory then, this is Cory now.
A lot of Corys.
Man, now slumlord, deadbeat owner of property on Court Street in Newark that he supposedly bought this piece of property, this townhouse that had fallen into disrepair.
Yes.
Because he was going to move his parents from the lap of luxury in a suburb in which they had earned the right to live their final years there into the heart of the hood. Am I supposed to believe that, caca?
You know, Curtis, listen, I like Cory Booker. I think he's a sharp guy in a lot of ways. He's smart, went to Ivy League schools, but he's got to get his story straight. And it's not a credible story. It is not a credible story that he purchased this building, went into disrepair, never really lived in it, never really lived in it, never lived in it. And now to say that his parents are going to be moving in there, when are they going to be moving in there? Who's responsible for the fact that drug addicts and vagrants and others moved into the building because it was left wide open and the things that happened there? Who's accountable to those residents, the neighbors of the mayors who were around there, have to deal with all the insanity, the crap that goes on there? The mayor's accountable for that. And, you know, I like him, but he's not taking responsibility for it, and that's a bad thing. That's a really bad thing, and I wish he would take responsibility for it instead of coming up with another story like, I'm going to move my parents in there. It's not credible. It's not serious. And he should not be doing that right now.
Steve Adubato Jr., I think back to when my dad was alive. It's the first anniversary of his death. It would be like me going to Canarsie, the house that I was raised in Brooklyn, and say, Mom, Dad, surprise. I invested in a piece of property in East New York across from Linden Boulevard. And I'm going to rehab it, and once it's all up to spec, you know, we've checked the wiring, the lighting, we made sure it's secure. I'm going to move you two in there. My father would have hit me so hard in his 90s, my mother would have felt the vibrations.
Well, here's the problem with Curtis, and you've got it. If someone catches up with Cory Booker's parents, and they're terrific people, I've met them before, they're a real class act. They catch up with his parents, and they put a camera in front of their face, and they say, Mr. and Mrs. Booker, when are you moving back to it's not the old neighborhood, Curtis, trust me. When are you moving back to, when are you going to move to the neighborhood that your son Cory is rehabbing a house? They'd be like, humana, to quote the great Jackie Gleason on The Honeymooners. They're going to be put on the spot. You don't do that to your parents. You don't give up your parents to run a U.S. Senate race, to win a Senate race. They're not moving back there, Curtis. It's not happening, and he should not have done it in order to get out from under the situation. You own the situation.
You
say, I wasn't planning on moving there. I screwed up. I didn't rehab the building. I'm responsible. Take the bullet. Take the hit.
Steve Adubato Jr., he might have taken a page from John Liu, who just failed in his bid to become the Democratic mayoral nominee, the city controller.
Didn't he put it on everybody else?
No, 4 years ago. Remember 4 years ago,
Yeah.
He tells the Daily News, he spins this yarn, that he used to go to the sweatshop that his mother had the singer, she was a singer sewing machine seamstress at the time, doing piecework in the sweatshop. And he used to be there and, putting the yarn together for her. And so then the Daily News decides, that sounds a little disingenuous. Let's go in there. And they asked the mother. Oh, he was never there. They asked the father. Oh, he was never there. And John Liu continued to tell the same story on the campaign trail. I'll never forget. At the time, I pick up the phone, running against him for city control in the Democratic primary, the mother of my two sons, Melinda Katz. And she said, he's going to win. He threw his own mother and father under the bus, called them liars. He's going to win, and he did.
In spite of
So
that.
maybe Cory Booker is saying, hey, I'll take a page out of the playbook of controller candidate at that time who went on to become city controller, John Liu.
The problem is with this, Curtis, I know that John Liu won that race. You know, the end of that story is not so great in terms of, you know, what happened, the morality. But let me just say this about Cory Booker. He doesn't need to do these things. He's going to win the U.S. Senate seat in New Jersey going away. It's not even a contest. So if you screw up, if you buy a building at bargain basement prices in Newark and say you're going to rehab it, and then you don't do it, then you just say, I didn't do it, I should have done it, and I'm responsible, and then you fix the damn building and you move on. And you're still going to win the Senate race. You don't have to make up a story. You don't have to, the Waywire thing, he ultimately sold the stock, right? But you didn't have to make up a story in the beginning to concoct a whole situation where you look disingenuous, like you're not being honest. He doesn't have to do these things because he'll win anyway. Curtis, he's going to win this race by 20, 25, 30 points. He doesn't have to win it, but the problem is going to be after he wins, there's going to be roadkill all over the place, and it potentially hurts his national reputation. For what?
Now,
For what?
I remember sitting at the lap side of my grandfather, Fidel Bianchino, and my grandmother, Nicoletta Bianchino from Bari. And I would tell a tall tale because, you know, I was looking to get out of having to do parole after school in the house.
Of course.
And my grandfather would look at me, one yan, you are ukiakiaran. You know what ukiakiaran is?
You talk too much, but go ahead.
Right, and you tell tall tales, and you're lying, and you're stretching the truth, and you're embellishing. I think I was like 6 or 7 years old at the time. Rand Paul comes in, right? He's invited by Steve Lonigan. Naturally, Steve Lonigan needs whatever ammunition he can get because, as you pointed out, it doesn't matter what Steve does, he's still 20, 30 percentage points behind in the polls. And the first thing that Rand Paul says when he gets to Clark, New Jersey for his first stop of the tour with Steve is, I came here to look for T-Bone.
Oh, see.
T-Bone.
Come on, Curtis. That's not fair.
Yeah, but
I think T-Bone might be around.
Yeah, but come on, T-Bone. And again, for those who are not aware, Cory Booker would use this fictitious person at fundraiser and other events to talk about when he first came to Newark and lived in public housing, how this T-Bone, you know, was vicious in his face, mad dogging him, threatened his life, and how Cory Booker was able to disarm him, not physically, but by just saying, hey, I'm a vegetarian. And then all of a sudden, T-Bone, you know, calmed down. It was like liquid Prozac to him. And they had a great relationship thereafter. Everyone's tried to find this guy, T-Bone. Why doesn't he just come out and just say, look, it was a metaphor. It was not a real person. I was trying to make him.
People like T-Bone out on the street, and that's a real guy, but there happened to be no person named T-Bone. Because that's all he had to say. Instead, even after the Star-Ledger, which is my paper, I write for them, but they love Cory Booker, they write a lot of articles saying we couldn't find T-Bone. Cory should have said there is no T-Bone, but the fact is there's lots of T-Bones out there, and we have to be concerned about them. He didn't do that.
Steve out about it. He could have said Bill Clinton did it, right, to make points from time to time. I did it. I apologize. Let's move on. But you know what I want to find out, Steve,
Go
desperately.
Ahead. What do you got?
I got problems. I got fiscal problems, all kind. I need a good accountant. And you know I live
you're going to go to, I know where you're going. You're talking about my old friend John Corzine.
No, not John Corzine. I'm going to give him a pass now because he belongs in jail. Particularly second anniversary of the 99% versus the 1% as Occupy Wall Street.
Go ahead.
I needed a good accountant. You know, my math was never a good subject of mine. Apparently, Cory Booker's accountant is somewhere in Queens. What's his name? Leonard something in some basement. The Mama Luke. He does
I remember his last name.
Right, he does the book. Please, could you find the address? I live in Forest Hills, Queens. Not Forest Hills, North Ward, you know, right near Branchville Park. Where I first went to a fundraiser to support Cory Booker. Best thing I ever did to get rid of that crook, Sharp James. But please, Steve, I need the I need the address. I need a guy who can cook the books good. By the way, Frank Malone, what's the name of that accountant? Remember Cory Booker's
Leonard Finkel.
Leonard Finkel.
Oh, Leonard Finkel.
Please. He does Corey's tax returns. They mysteriously come up with a lot of good number. I need that help, please.
I find that guy, Curtis. I'm sending him right over to you to help you take care of your business.
You know, Bernie Madoff's accountant from New City in Rockland County in the storefront, he's in jail now, so I can't use his services. What's the guy's name again?
Still Leonard Finkel.
Leonard Finkel, the Mama Luke, the Mashad. You know, he does the books in the house that his family raised him in. Please, Steve. I need help. I need help.
Come on, give Corey a break. Lay off Corey.
I give him no break because he's going to be able to bend the baloney in the cloakrooms of the U.S. Senate with the rest, with Bobby Menendez, who tells these great stories too. Like, remember, he used the analogy of how he used to get beaten up and bullied on the way to school, and then one day he's at the construction site, he picks a 2x4 up, hits the bully in the back of the head. The Sopranos buried him right there. Nobody has found the bully since. Will you tell me that wasn't a story that he whipped up?
I can't believe you bring these things up. We're talking about the head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and you got to bring up history all the time.
Yeah, but his justification for attacking Syria, for sending the cruise Tomahawk missiles in was his bully boy story that I think he just whipped up. I think he made that up.
Curtis, not everyone lived on the streets and had the experiences you did. So sometimes we have to maybe make some things up to make ourselves a little tougher than we really are. Why don't you give us a break, huh?
He said it was a tough neighborhood in Union City, Hudson County, Bergen Line Avenue. I never knew that to be a real tough spot. Did you, Steve?
Listen, I was in the North Ward of Newark, and things were rough, but never as rough as what you experienced, Curtis.
Do appreciate that, Steve Adubato Jr. Enough was said there by his refusal to answer about Bergen Line Avenue, Union City, Hudson County being a tough neighborhood. Hey, really, Bobby Menendez? Boy, they're baloney benders over there. Imagine you'll have two U.S. senators literally bending every day on the floor of the Senate, the baloney. Hopefully it's Boar's Head. And not the cut rate bologna that's part pork and part chicken and not all beef.